Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today I'm speaking with Justin Tinsley. Justin is a senior writer for ESPN's Anscape, a journalist known for his entertaining probes into the intersections of hip-hop, pop culture, and sports. We discuss his book, It Was All a Dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him, a heavily researched biography of the notorious B.I.G. and the culture and communities that shaped him. Justin has also written sharp commentary on Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Serena Williams, Cardi B, and Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle was also the subject for his 30 for 30 podcast, The King of Crenshaw. Quick reminder, everything we talk about on each episode of this show can be found in the link in the show notes. And remember, the Stacks Book Club pick for June is White Negroes When Cornrows Were in Vogue and Other Thoughts on Cultural Appropriation by Lauren Michelle Jackson. We will be discussing the book on Wednesday, June 29th with David Dennis Jr. Listen, The Stacks is a completely independent podcast. It is only made possible by the support of our listeners. I cannot stress enough how I would not be able to make this show week in and week out without the support of the Stacks Pack, our incredible bookish community that supports the Stacks on Patreon. If not for them, there would be no show. So if you like this podcast and want to show it some love, plus earn perks for yourself, like our monthly bonus episodes, shout outs on the podcast, our book club, and our incredibly lively Discord community full of book recommendations and other non-bookish things, go to patreon.com/thestacks. Thank you to our newest member of the Stacks Pack, Gunnar Sloan. And thank you to every single member of the Stacks Pack for making this show possible. Okay, now it's time for my chat with Justin Tinsley. All right, everybody, I'm very excited. Today, I am talking to Justin Tinsley. He's the author of the brand new biography of Biggie Smalls called It Was All a Dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him. Justin, welcome to the Stacks.
I am truly blessed to be here. I am very excited for this.
Oh my gosh, this is so great. Okay, we're going to dive right in. In about 30 seconds or so, can you tell people about the book?
Well, the book came out on May 10th. It is a part biography of Christopher Wallace, who was, of course, known as the Notorious B.I.G., but it's also a socio-political, socio-cultural, socio-economic examination of the world around him, hence the title, Biggie and the World That Made Him.
Perfect. Okay, we have to start with the most important part of this entire book, which happens on the first page in the second or third sentence, which is, I did not know what B.I.G. stood for.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't.
It's maybe the most embarrassing thing about Biggie is that it stood for business instead of game.
Yeah.
Like what?
That's what he said in the interview. At least I don't think you need to be embarrassed by it because I don't think
I think he needs to be embarrassed by it. What does it mean? Business instead of game? I don't know.
I mean, he was all about his money, I guess. You know, I'm about my business instead of playing games. I don't know.
He's just like such a prolific poet, wordsmith. And I'm like, that is how you decided to do B.I.G. I feel like he could have done better. It was probably early, in his career.
It was definitely early.
Whatever. Yeah. So like, I'll give him a little credit. But when I read that, I was like, I had to go back and read it a few different times because I kept forgetting. I was like, I know it's something silly, but I can't remember. Anyways, that's just me joking. Okay. You touched on this before, and I'll just let people know at home. I am not a huge Biggie person. I'm not anti-Biggie. I just was not raised listening to Biggie. I'm from California, so I feel like Tupac is sort of was the go-to person in my life. So I didn't know a lot about his life. Like this book, I learned a lot of stuff, and some of the things I'm sort of embarrassed that I didn't know. But also, I think you and I are about the same age. And so, when Biggie and Pac died, I was 10.
Yeah.
I wasn't even 11. I don't think I'd even turned 11 quite yet when Biggie died. And so I had heard a lot of the stories, but I didn't really understand the context. And that's the thing that really I was taken by in this book was less about the story of Biggie's life and more about how you put him and his life into context. Obviously, that must have been important to you because you do it throughout the book. But can you sort of tell me how you were thinking about doing that? Like how that came to you, why you sort of wanted to include all of that in this story?
Yeah. So once I signed the contract to do the book, and I would say probably around like January 2020, and you know how it
Mm.
is in the book publishing world, you get half of your money up front and then half once you submit the manuscript.
Right, right,
So
right.
when I got the first half of that check, I was like, wow, this is the biggest check, the single check that I've ever gotten in my life. And I'm like, this is great. Then it hit me. I'm like, well, what the hell do I tell people? Like I say in the book, like, what the hell do I tell people about Biggie Smalls that they don't already know? Because at this point, he's
Mhm.
like Tupac, he's like a folk hero. Like there have been
Right.
countless documentaries and there's been movies and there's been, books written about the conspiracy theories around he and Tupac's death and things of that nature. And I knew I didn't want to do that because
Mhm.
I wanted to more focus on his life rather than focusing on the tragic way that he died. Of course that would be in there, but maybe I would say once I realized that I was going to have to do this entire book in quarantine and
Right.
like research, report, interview, outline, and write, once I figured that out, I was like, all right, I need a different like entry point into this story.
Mm.
And while this book is a straight up biography in the sense of he was born here on this date and he died here on this date,
Right.
I knew I wanted to make it, I wanted to put his life in context of what was going on in Brooklyn, New York, America, the world at that point in time, because none of our life stories are just about us. We're influenced by the experiences that we have, the decisions that are made within our control and even a lot beyond our control. And I felt Biggie's life was a perfect microcosm of that, because if we want to talk about drug dealing, and yeah, he sold drugs for sure, but are we talking about the socio-political factors that went into that and the war on drugs that started even before he was even born? Like, yeah, he sold
Yeah.
drugs, but he was just another soldier in that, decades long war within America. And I knew I wanted to paint these pictures because I feel like it would give a fresh perspective on a
Mhm.
person that we know so much about.
Yeah. And I think two things to that point. One is like for me, the moment that I realized like that your book was gonna do this and that was like thrilling to me was when you talked about the 1960s. And it had
Yeah.
never occurred to me that like all of my favorite hip hop people of that generation were born between like 1969 and 1975,
Yeah.
meaning like their parents were in their 20s and 30s during the civil rights movement. Like that these are children, they're like what I hope that our generation's kids will be like in the wake of Black Lives Matter and all of the
Yeah.
activism that's going on now, like that influences them. And again, like a lot of things as I was reading, I was sort of embarrassed because I was like, I feel like I should have connected these dots. But like just reading about Valletta Wallace, his mother, like coming to America in the 1960s and like as an immigrant to New York and what she was coming into and like
Yeah.
what the politics of this time were, it was like, of course, this makes Biggie make more sense. And it also makes Biggie make more sense why he wasn't super political in his music.
Yeah.
Right? Like that
Mhm.
was a choice that he made, but it wasn't because he was ignorant to what was going on. Like, so all of that, like for me, I think that's, chapter 1 or whatever. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And like, and the other thing that I really appreciated about it, which, similar to a friend of yours' book, Danielle Smith's book in Shine Bright, it's the respect that you give to these artists that have been disrespected. Like the fact that a true biography of Christopher Wallace did not really exist until now. Imagine if there was no books on Elvis until 25 years after he
Right.
died.
Yeah.
And like that those books wouldn't be deserving of contextualizing his life and his story, or the Beatles or whoever. And so I think that like what you've done is really great and also like very important to the conversation of like what hip hop music is and what it means, because like we're the hip hop generation junior. I don't know. We're quite a little younger, but you know what I mean?
get
Like
what you're saying.
we deserve to have our heroes and our folk heroes and our leaders and our, the people, we deserve to have their stories told in context of America and not just in context of he wrote this song.
Yeah.
That's not a question. It's just a really long
I think
sentence.
no, and I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. One of the first people I spoke to, not even for an interview, just to tell them I was doing this, is a really good friend of mine. His name is Chael Hadari Coker. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of him. He actually wrote a biography of Biggie back in 2002, 2003, which is
But he's friends with Biggie,
yeah,
right?
he knew Big personally, and
Yeah.
Biggie told him, was like, I want you to be my Alex Haley, basically, because I
Mm.
want a book done on my life. I'm just not ready for it right now, because he was only 24.
Right.
He figured
Right.
like he had decades and decades more to live. So I knew he knew him personally. I knew he took Biggie's story personally, and he's somebody that I consider a mentor and a friend. So he's one of the first people I reached out to, but I was also kind of nervous to reach out to him because it was like, you just never know how somebody's going to react. But
Yeah.
he reacted in such a beautiful, authentic way. And he was like, look, it tripped. I can't remember what he said verbatim, but basically what he said was, it trips me out that the majority of what's been done on him is more so like a whodunit type thing. Like
Yeah.
who pulled the
A
trigger.
crime story.
A
True
crime story. Exactly. And while that is, of course, part of the story, it's not the entire story. And he was like, I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful that you're telling this story for like a basically a new generation of hip hop fans. And he was
Yeah.
like, if anybody was to tell that story, I want it to be you. And that put a battery in my back. And I was like, okay, I got to do this the right way. And so just to go off what you said, like outside of that, it really trips me out that there wasn't a definitive biography of Christopher Wallace's life and times. And I knew, you know, Unbelievable is such a unbelievable book that I was like, all right, I got to do it differently than how Chael did it. You know what I mean? And that's when it hit me. It was just like, we put these other artists, like you said, the Beatles and Elvis and, you know, obviously John Lennon is part of the Beatles, but you get what I'm saying. And, you
what's
know,
his face? What Bruce Springsteen?
Yeah, Bruce
People
Springsteen.
obsessed with him.
You know, like all artists who obviously made a big impact on the world in their own ways. But I was like, we don't give hip hop artists that. It's just more so, like you said, they made this song. Oh, they talked about violence and some of them died in violent ways and maybe they brought that on themselves. I'm like, no, we have to give these people the care that they deserve because they made music that impacted the world. Their lives changed the world. I tell people all the time, I don't know if there's an artist, and not just hip hop artists. I don't know if there's an artist, period, who did as much in such a short period of time as Biggie. You know, obviously Pac falls into that as well. But Biggie's first album came out in September 1994. He was dead by March 1997. That's 2.5 years. Like
Pac's career was longer.
Yeah, it was a little bit longer. But yes, they were both super young.
So young.
And we need to give these artists, and for the sake of conversation, somebody like Christopher Wallace, Biggie Smalls, like we need to treat that with care because for so long, you know, these artists have been in large part stripped of their humanity. They're remembered by the negative headlines. Oh, Biggie beef with Tupac and Tupac beef with Biggie. And then they were both, you know, shot in drive-by shootings and killed in drive-by shootings. Yes, that happened. But, you know, they lived so much of a rich life, even before, during, and after that, that like we need to give these people the grace and humanity they deserve because they've been stripped of that. And you mentioned Danielle Smith. I think she did an incredible job with that in her book as well. And just to be mentioned with her, you know, that means the world to me because she's not only a really, really good friend of mine, she's somebody I've admired for well over half of my life.
Yeah. She's our book club. She was our book club pick for May and she was a guest on the show. So everyone listening now knows how obsessed with Danielle I have become. But reading your book so close together, because I read her book a few weeks ago, reading your book so close together, I was like, right, this is not just about Black women in pop music. This is about Black cultural icons, period.
Yeah.
And again, like talking about the things that you know in your body that you know to be true but aren't actually validated. Like your book validated for me a lot of things that I knew about the racism against rappers, but like couldn't quite articulate or like you know these things. Like,
For
when you're
sure.
talking to someone, when a white person, when they've said the N word, but like, you can't
Hmm.
say for sure, but like,
Yeah.
it.
I got a
That's how I
good
felt
feeling.
reading your book. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
just like, yes, I'm right. I knew
Hmm.
it all along.
Yeah.
Um, this is sort of a hypothetical. I'm asking you to do an impossible thing question. So
Let's
you
do it.
do your best.
Let's do it.
How do you draw a line from 1990s hip hop to where we are right now as far as like Black activism and pop culture? Like, how do you give us context now, like you did give Biggie context in the 90s? Like, what would you say now about where we are? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, no. It's a fascinating question, and it's a crazy hypothetical,
Yeah.
for sure. But you know, the 1990s were the start of the commercialization of hip hop, when hip hop really became like this undeniable force. And
Mm-hmm.
what's crazy is we saw it happening in the 90s. We saw how impactful, how influential, and how deeply hip hop permeated within American culture and society. Now, the crazy thing is, once Tupac was murdered, and then 6 months later, after Biggie was murdered, there was a real concern about, damn, is this it? People have been
Mm-hmm.
saying for a long time that hip hop was just going to fade away like disco did. It was just a fad. It was a trend.
Mm-hmm.
And after those two murders, there was some legitimacy to that. It was like, okay, we just lost our two biggest stars within 6 months
Mm-hmm.
of each other. Like, what the hell happens next? Well, we saw what happened next. Like, of course, hip hop has never recovered from those two losses, but hip hop just became bigger. It became more commercially successful. You started to see it more and more commercials. You started to see more and more endorsements. But also, like, when things went wrong, people also latched on to hip hop and be like, "See, this is why we don't need this in our society." And fast forward 25, 30 years, we see hip hop now is like, I read a study a couple of weeks ago. The most streamed music in the world, not just America, but in the world, is hip hop and R&B. They accounted for 31.1% of all streams, of
Wow.
all streams in music. And then everything
Right.
else just basically broke down to remaining like 69%. And we've seen how society has really taken on these conversations of mental health awareness, social justice. And if you listen to hip hop, and especially hip hop in its greatest form, that has always been there. It's always
Mm-hmm.
been there. You listen to NWA's early music on Straight Outta Compton, they were basically telling you, like, the situations in our communities, this is a ticking time bomb. Like, if you don't address this in the proper way, it's going to get
Yep.
ugly. And then what
Yep.
happened 4 years later? The LA riots.
Right.
So when you listen to somebody like Kendrick Lamar's "All Right," like, that's the
Right.
soundtrack for this young Black America, this young America who feels like our voices aren't being heard. When you see somebody like a J. Cole go on, I believe it was Letterman, and do the song "Be Free" after Michael
Mm-hmm.
Brown was killed, Mike
Mm-hmm.
Brown was killed. So, like, these connections have always been there, but I think now, with the advancement of the internet and social
Mm-hmm.
media, and literally everything is a click away. Whereas in the 90s, like, if you miss something on TV, you better hope somebody recorded it on
Right.
VHS, or you better hope to see it again on like late night
Right.
TV. But I would say that the connection now is, it's more immediate. Like, we can
Right.
see the connection. We can see, artists at protests. We can see artists venting their frustrations, whether it be on
Right.
Instagram stories or Twitter. And sometimes it has like a counter effect too. Like, sometimes it can be bad. Like, we see what's going on with the Young Thug and Gunna situation, with the RICO
Right.
cases, and how their music can be used as a means to prosecute them. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of that situation, but hip hop is the only genre
Yeah.
that I'm gonna take your lyrics and say, this is why you're a bad person. And we've seen
Right.
it over and over again. We see it with YSL and Thug and Gunna. We saw it with Bobby Shmurda and the GS9 crew. We saw
Yep.
it with the late Draco the Ruler, and how they tried to use his lyrics against him. Like, we don't do that with movies.
Do you know there's a book called Rap on Trial?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
have you read it?
I haven't read it, but it is definitely on my to-do list. Like,
I read it because I was hosting a panel for the Library of Virginia's like nonfiction book awards a few years ago,
wow.
and it was up for it. And I got to speak to them. And no offense. I don't think the book is great. It's very redundant, but like the intro and the outro of the book are phenomenal. And it makes so much sense. Like they talk about how like Johnny Cash was not prosecuted for lyrics in his song. I guess he has a song about killing people. I don't know Johnny Cash, but like he talks. I just remember him like naming Johnny Cash and me being like, "Wow, incredible!" Yeah. But it's a really interesting book for people who are interested in that because, you know, spoiler alert, racism. Just gonna broadly throw that out there.
Go figure, right?
Yeah. I do think that like the death. I can only speak for myself and sort of anecdotally, but I do think that like the murders of Pac and Biggie actually made hip hop bigger. I think that like it made it sexier because it made it realer in a really fucked up way, but like also in a truly American way of like this obsession with death and like the dramatic death of Black celebrity and like the obsession with that. Like you were talking about you want to make them human because they've been stripped down to like their worst, most vulnerable, horrible moments. But I do think that like to a point, having these men murdered and like outside publicly.
Yeah.
Both deaths were very public, like at a party, at a fight, like outside these locations, all these people. I do think that like that gave credibility to what they were talking about in a way that maybe you could ignore the truth of some of it before. I don't know. That's just like my sort of sense.
It definitely stamped the genre in a
as
way
like authentic or something.
And it's unfortunate that that had to be the authenticity of it. And I mean, it's just it's a power of the tongue too. You know, like Pac had a song, "I See Death Around the Corner," and he talked about it. You know, he talked about not living to be old. He talked about like, I'm going to get out of here at an early age. And you know, Big named his first album "Ready to Die," and his second album "Life After Death." You know, and he never had a chance to hear life after death in the world with everybody because he was murdered but like 3 weeks before it came out. But it definitely stamped hip hop in a way that separated itself from other genres in a sense. But it's really screwed up, and it's really, like you said, American, because there's this infatuation with death and, you know, canonizing people after they're no longer here to be like, you know what, this person was actually right about this, but we didn't really give them their proverbial flowers when they were here. So let's like double down on it, you know, once they're gone. But yeah, in real time, it was scary because nobody knew what was going to come of hip hop. But in the, you know, from a macro point of view, they definitely became martyrs for a genre. Although I don't know if either one really wanted to become a martyr. No, but I mean,
no. I don't. Do you think people want to become martyrs?
I think. Well, the way Pac talked about it, I think he was fine with it if that happened. But if you talk about Biggie, like, yeah, he talked about death in his music, but he also talked a lot about like, yo, I can't wait to be like a suburban soccer dad to my kids. I can't wait to grow old. And even on his second album, even though it's called Life After Death, it sounds completely different from his first album. There's not this level of desperation and panic and paranoia the way that the first one was. And you can see that like he was really happy about, obviously the beef with Tupac really soured a lot of things, but he was very happy about where he was going in terms of like being able to provide for his family, having two kids that he knew were going to depend on him. So, they eventually became martyrs for the genre. Like you can't talk about hip hop and not have the names Tupac and Biggie come up, at least if that's not the first two names out of your mouth, they're somewhere near the very, very front of the line.
Right. Okay. I want to talk about another figure in this book who is sort of a supporting character in Big's life. Sean P. Diddy Combs.
Whew. Yeah.
Again. Yeah. I'm going to say this again. There's a lot of things in this book I did not know. I'm sort of embarrassed about some of it. And again, I blame my age and like where I was in my life for some of it, because I think that like as it was happening, I didn't really understand because I was 9. I had no fucking clue that Puff Daddy was like an actual tough guy. Like, I always just thought that Puff Daddy was like hanging out with people on a boat in a wife beater with an open shirt, like hanging out, having a good time, friends of friends. I know Mace, I know Biggie, I know Lil Kim. I didn't know how like important he was behind the scenes to the actual music. I did not know that him and Suge Knight like I knew Suge Knight was like a scary bad guy. Like like his reputation really, that's it. Like that's the list.
Yeah.
But like if you know, and I think this goes to kind of your point, like if you get to live, if you don't die at 24, 25, you get to become other things. I mean, we see it with Puffy. We also see it with Donald Trump throughout the book, who's mentioned a bunch of times. Like Donald Trump and Biggie's lives were like very connected for the short period of Biggie's life. But like Donald Trump went on to become the fucking president, and Puff Daddy went on to become Sean John, P. Diddy, Sean Puffy Combs. Like, but I did not know about the incident at City College. Like there were so many things about Puff Daddy where I was like, oh, he was actually a serious person.
Yeah. Puff.
He wasn't always like the butt of my jokes.
No, like Puff, I won't call Puffy like a tough guy like Suge was. Like Suge was
not as tough as Suge, but like he was running around in the same conversation.
Yeah, no,
he wasn't what Puffy is now.
Yeah, no, Puff knew a lot of dudes from the streets, and you know what I mean. And like Puff was connected. I'm sure he still is in his own ways, but there's no way to shortchange how big Puffy was in the early 90s, because even before Big, like the City College incident was such a big news, headline, because he had worked with Jodeci, and he had turned Jodeci into like this hit act. He was working with Mary J. Blige. He was working with Heavy D. Like he had the Midas touch. He wasn't a producer in the sense of I'm gonna put this beat together. He was a producer in the sense of kind of like an interior decorator. Like let's put this right here. Let's put that right here. Let's put this drum kick right here. Let me ad lib a part right here because this is going to catch people's ear. He knew how to craft a hit. And with the City College incident, when we talk about Travis Scott and what happened at Astro World, there was so many parallels to Puffy and what happened with the City College incident in December 1991. And when you talk about Biggie in relation to Puffy needed that win. Puffy needed that, like, okay, I am going to have a life in the music industry after this horrific and traumatic event, which, followed him for years after that. It still technically follows him now, but definitely in the decade after that event, he was still dealing with the legal ramifications of it, which is why, like, when you talk about Puffy, for all the success that he had, basically having Biggie drop in his lap was what he needed desperately at that point, because a lot of people had turned on him because of that City College incident. The newspapers were saying some not so flattering things about him in there.
Right.
And, he was kind of wearing out his welcome at Uptown. So when Biggie fell in his lap, he was like, wait a minute. Like, I'll do my Diddy thing where it's like, I'll put you in these clothes. I'll ask you to make these type of hits. But like, this dude is a tailor-made rapper that, is rapping about, life in the streets. And this is what I want to get into in terms of like my next big artist. So the Puffy story runs in tandem with Big's story and the story of America in this book in a very, very real way, because I don't think you can tell it any other way.
Right. I mean, I just think like, I just remember my brother getting like Sean John clothes. Yeah. And he was like, I just think he's become sort of a joke because his name was Puff Daddy. And I think that like Puff Daddy, just the words like is such a joke. I mean, even in the book, Valletta is like, who? When he's like, this guy Puff Daddy's can help me. And he's like, what? She's like, what are you saying? But like, I think about like remember the shirts had like the puffy lettering, the Sean John shirts, like in the cursive, and it like stood out from the shirt. And that was like such a revolutionary thing that I remember it, 20 years later. Like I'm talking about it right now. Yeah. And I also like, I did not realize how many people had been like killed or beat up or whatever prior that like led to this situation. I sort of thought of it as like how beef is now, where it's like, oh, she tweeted a mean thing. Like I never
Yeah.
really thought about like
Nah.
the context of like like that was some real shit. People were
Yeah. No.
dying. Like, yo.
Yeah. A lot of people get the East West thing misconstrued as where it's like, oh, it was really just Biggie and Tupac, having a falling out.
Right.
Yes, that happened, but no, that beef was really more so Suge and Puffy.
Suge.
And
Yeah.
the 1995 Source Awards are always remembered because of the theatrics of everything in there. Snoop getting up on stage saying East Coast ain't got no love for Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, and
Right.
Suge basically dissing Puffy at on stage, basically saying, "Come to death row if you don't want the executive producer." All in the video, like
Right.
the theatrics are remembered from that. But what a lot of people don't know is what really set that off was a month later at Jermaine Dupri's birthday party in Atlanta when one of Suge Knight's closest friends was murdered. Death Row and Bad Boy were in the party together. They were allegedly wolfing back and forth, and they, Suge and Puffy had to be basically escorted out the party. And per the reports, they say that one of Puffy's bodyguards killed one of Suge's friends, shot him and killed him. And that, more than anything, is what, there was blood on the streets, literally, at that point. And there was, unfortunately, there was no turning back. Suge wanted to annihilate Puffy.
Mm-hmm.
He was already bailing Tupac out, and he knew that Tupac, for as iconic of an artist as he is probably the most iconic artist of my lifetime. Because I mean, I love Tupac, but he could be manipulated very easly. And Suge saw a vulnerable Tupac. Tupac was in prison for a crime that he, to the day that he died, said he didn't commit, but he was sitting in a maximum security penitentiary. He was being abused by prison guards in jail, and he was going crazy. So like, if his get out of jail card was Suge, and Suge was like, yo, we got to ride on Puffy and Biggie and Bad Boy, Tupac was going to do that to the most nth degree possible. And he knew he could manipulate that about Tupac. So by the time Pac got out of prison less than a month later, gasoline was already being thrown on the fire. And there was, so the East-West thing, yes, there was a lot of violence in that period in time that, a lot of it just never got reported. Right. Outside of a police report, if there was a police report, never made headlines.
I don't want to talk too much about Tupac because it's some of my favorite stuff of the book and I want people to read it.
Yeah.
But I will just say another thing I did not know. I didn't know they were friends.
See, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm very, very glad you brought that up. And we talked about,
I had no idea.
stripping humanity and, grace and things of that nature. Like when we hear Biggie and Tupac, we hear, oh, they had beef and Tupac hit him up and, they had a falling out and then they died. Like, yes, those are parts of the story that actually happened. That is very true. But like, if we're going to sensationalize that over the last quarter century, then we also have to talk about why that falling out was so dramatic. It's because their friendship was so intense. It was so pure and it was so genuine. Like there was a deep level of respect for Biggie with Tupac and Tupac with Biggie. And I wanted this book to showcase that just as much as anything else, because again, they were both young Black men with large positions of power, still trying to figure out their own lives and just happy being in concert with each other. And so they weren't just friends. They were really, really good friends, which makes the story that much more tragic.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil it, but I just will say for people, there's a little anecdote in the book about some flowers that basically made me want to put the book down and cry for 7 months. So just really a tenderness. Okay, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us and I've got love on the brain. Love for books. Duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, we're back. I have to tell you a personal story about Biggie's death. So I live in LA. I think you know that. We met here. And I have 2.5-year-old twins, boys. They love cars. We have a membership to the Peterson Car Museum, Automotive Museum. So as I'm listening to the book, kind of early on, you tease out on March 9th, 97, at the corner of Fairfax and Wilshire. And I'm like, where is that? I was like, I know where that is. That's so close. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. And then as we get to the end, you're like, oh, Biggie's like, oh, I'm going to go to this party at the Peterson Car Museum. And I was like, on Fairfax and Wilshire? No. So now I can never go back to the museum because I'm going to just feel so differently about that space. And it's also right across the street from where the new Academy Awards Museum is. It's the same. They're on the same corner. Yeah, they're across the street from each other. I had no idea. I've lived in the city for 10 years. I had no idea that's where it was.
Yeah. When I first moved to LA in 2015, and just me being like a pop culture nut, I was like, yo,
you
I
went there first. You went to In-N-Out and then there.
Yeah, I definitely got some food first. And I went to some food first. I went to a dispensary, and then I went to the corner of Fairfax and Wilshire. And it's so wild because it's kind of like Koval and Flamingo in Las Vegas where Pac was killed. At Fairfax and Wilshire, at least for me, because I knew what happened right there and I understood the history, it's heavy right there. There's nothing around there that would signal okay, this is where, Christopher Wallace was murdered or anything like that. But if you know, you know. And it just felt very heavy. I'm like, wow, it happened right here. So yeah, once you realize where it is, you can't look at it. The crazy thing is I've actually never been inside the Peterson though. I'd never
been until 2 months ago. My in-laws got us a membership because my kids are obsessed with cars. I don't care about cars. Could care less. Truly one of the things I'm the least interested in the world is automotives. It's a no for me, but I go twice a month now at least.
Yeah, now you have to. Yeah.
Now I have to go. I'm like, and we have a it's just, anyways, it's a nightmare for me personally. But knowing that that's there now, the next time I go, I'm going to have to put on Juicy or something as I go by and feel really connected. But it's just, I agree with you. I feel whenever I go to places where I know something, someone's life has been taken, when you know it and you get to that place, there is something that sucks the air out of the space for you.
Yep.
I've been to Vegas many times, but I've never been to where Tupac was killed knowingly. But now that I know the intersection, I can check that out next time I go, which will be never. I'm wondering a little bit about your research interview process. I know you talked about, I've heard you talk about listening to podcasts and watching documentaries. And I think you talked about that in the conclusion of the book, of some of your sources. And you also talk about how, you weren't able to get Valletta Wallace and Faith Evans and Lil' Kim and
Yeah.
like a lot of the people that we publicly know to be the closest to Biggie. And so I'm wondering, like, how were they on your list originally? They said no. How did you then source like later people? Also, was sort of surprised Danielle Smith was not a source in the book. I was expecting to see her because she was around. She was doing her thing then.
Yeah.
And I know you know her, and I know she was like you worked with her. I was like, oh, she'll pop up, and she didn't. So I was a little sad.
Danielle actually wrote the obituary for Big, I believe, in Vibe. But yeah, I wanted to interview Danielle for it, but I know she was like neck deep in her book at that time.
That's right,
the timing just didn't work out. But she was absolutely a great resource for me with this book in terms of like pointing me in directions of where to go and people who to talk to. But early on, when I first signed a contract to do this book, I wrote a letter and I sent it to Biggie's estate. And I wanted to let them know, I was like, hey, look, I'm working on this book. And I would love to have your involvement on it, but I completely understand if you don't want to. Right. But I want you to know that this is happening, and I want you to know that like this is not some like clickbait, salacious type book where I'm trying to expose, deep dark secrets of his life and tear him apart. This is not that. Now, I will be honest and forthcoming about his entire life, good, bad, and indifferent, as best as I can. But I want you to know this book is going to be done out of like love and respect, one for his legacy and who he is as a person, but also the craft of journalism as well. Right. And so I never heard anything back, but I never heard anything back saying, no, we don't want you to do this book either. So I knew early on I probably wasn't going to get Valletta or Faith, but I also looked at it as like, there's a ton of archival material on them already talking about Big. Of course, you want to get your own new material, but like it could be worse. It could be nothing out there on them talking about them. So I knew I had that, but it was also a chance for me to introduce new voices into it, or at least voices that really don't get as much pub in terms of the Biggie story. Like Drew Dixon was one of my favorite interviews for this book. She was the music industry exec who lived in Brooklyn in like the early 90s. And she and Biggie formulated a great friendship just in terms of trying to crack into the music industry around the same time, but from different ways. Talked to party promoters down in Raleigh, North Carolina when he was hustling. And this would be Big lying about being Chubb Rock's cousin, saying just so he could get on the mic. So every person I interviewed, I would always, as a reporter, you like, is there anybody else I should be talking to? And can you like point me in that direction? And people were more than willing to point me in the direction. Now, not every interview came up that they pointed me in the direction to, but I appreciated that nonetheless. So that was how I got a lot of interviews. It was just more like a scavenger hunt. Like you get one person who will refer you to two more, and those two people will refer you to four, and so on and so forth. But in terms of research, I've always been a research nerd. I love reading like newspaper archives. I love going through like, news archives, whether it be TV stations or radio programs. And I already had a lot of knowledge about Biggie going into it. So it helped me think of new ways to talk about him throughout the process. So it was confusing at first, but once I got my footing, I think I hit a good groove around maybe like June or July of 2020.
I liked your sources. I felt like they lent a lot of depth that you maybe wouldn't get from the family or like people really close. I also think like one of the things that I appreciated about your book was how important the women in Christopher's life were to his story. Obviously his mother, but his daughter, Faith, Lil' Kim, like Charlie Baltimore. Like I can't remember her name, but the mother of his daughter.
Yeah, Jan Jackson. Yep.
Yeah, I think like so often women are erased, as we've talked about, from pop music, from hip hop, and also from the legacies of, these folk heroes, right? Like obviously we all know Tupac's mom because he made sure we did with Dear Mama, right? Like and her story, she was famous in her own right for her own activism. But I think that like I just want to say thank you for including them and making sure that they were as important to his story as Sean P. Diddy Combs or as Tupac, because they really informed his music and his choices and his humanity.
Yeah. Like well, thank you for thanking me for that. Cause I'm always very cognizant about that in just in anything that I do, whether it's a podcast or whether it's a written story or whether it's like this book. And that's something I noticed a lot growing up, as to where like when I read like these stories on like these great men who did so many things, like the women in their lives, at best, they were like footnotes. At worst, you just didn't hear from them at all. And I was like, for me to tell this story about Biggie Smalls, there's no way you cannot talk about the women in his life. And yes, Valletta, of course, and of course Faith, because he was married to her. But like so much of his story revolved around women, good and bad,
Right.
And so like I knew that I wanted to do this, and I knew they had to be, important parts of this story, because like you said, they made up part of who he is. Like,
Right.
So much of who Biggie is Tiana. But how did Tiana come into this world is through his relationship with Jan Jackson. And how did they meet? And how did they grow together? And how did they fall apart? Like, you have to talk about it all.
Right.
And I credit Danielle Smith with really helping me make that a priority in everything that I do. And because we would work on stories at the Undefeated, and I'd be like, man, I need a woman's voice in this. She was like, yeah, let's get some women in here, let's do that, and it just makes the story that much richer when you have like a diverse array of voices. And so that's always a priority of mine. I'm not just putting women in the story just to be like, oh, look, it's a woman in the story, just to be like, hey, look, no, I'm doing that because I understand the value, the texture, and just the nuance that that brings to a story. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I thank you for thanking me. Just know I'm thankful.
Okay, we have to quickly talk about the cover.
Yeah,
because it's so good. How involved were you in the cover? What was the process? Were you involved at all? I know sometimes authors aren't. I think it's a great cover.
The cover is phenomenal. The cover, it makes you want to read the book. The spine is beautiful. I love the fact that the spine is kind of reminiscent of like his Coogee sweaters.
His sweaters.
Yeah. So,
and I love that his sweaters are on color on the cover.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
And I love when you open the book, there's like a map of Brooklyn, and like this. So to be honest, I had nothing to do with that. They showed me the final version of it. I was like, whoa. Okay. So they showed me like a couple different versions of artists who they were thinking of designing the cover. And the one that stood out to me the most, like immediately, was the one that eventually became that. And I was like, yo, I don't know who did that. I didn't know who did it at first. I was like, I don't know who did that. Please pick that person. Please pick that person. And they were great. And now, in terms of the cover, the only thing I came up with was the title.
Got it. But I want to ask you about that. How did you decide which lyric? Did you always know that was what it was going to be when you started working on it?
No, like when I first started, and I actually found my old Google Doc about this. Like the original title was like "Sky's the Limit," which is my favorite Biggie song. Like "Sky's the Limit," something about Biggie Smalls' gospel or something like that. And it was just a placeholder title, because I was like, all right, this title is way too long. And I'm like, but it's not going to stick. Come to find out, I eventually had a long title. And I changed the title early on, not knowing that it was actually going to stick. But I knew like "It Was All a Dream" is one of those like famous call and responses in all of music, especially, for people like us. Like we're going to like, "It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine." Yeah, everybody knows what goes after that. Yeah. So it's going to roll off the tongue for a lot of people. Like, all right, that's a very famous lyric in music. So I stuck with that. And then once I started getting the contextual stuff about society and America and, just giving like the history lesson, that's where the Biggie in the world that made him came from. So it was kind of like a 2-part process.
Yeah. I was, as I was listening, I was trying to think of like what other lyrics would have worked, but it's, I think it's the best one, but now I can't think of it. The like, "Show Love, It's the Brooklyn Way." I thought that was potentially could have been
that's good too. Yeah,
because he's so Brooklyn, and like you make that point. Because I think like also part of his legacy is like how Brooklyn he was. Because with Tupac, he wasn't from a place. He was like from a lot of places.
Yeah,
and so like I know they did a huge party for Biggie's 50th birthday, but I don't think
Mm-hmm.
they did that for Tupac because it was like, who was going to do it? Was Oakland going to do it? Was Baltimore going to do it? Was New York going to do it? Like, it was like,
Yeah.
there's nowhere for him to be. Anyways,
Yeah.
okay, I want to talk about you for a second.
Okay.
You are a writer at Anscape, formerly The Undefeated, an impossible thing to remember, but I made a note before I started talking.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
How did you make time to write this? Did you take like a sabbatical thing, or did you just sort of fill it in as you could?
If I knew then what I know now, I would have absolutely taken a sabbatical, but I didn't. I was working on this. I was working on this Nipsey Hussle podcast that I was working on, and I was working on Dwayne Wade's photographic memoir, Dwayne, which I helped write. So I was doing all three of those, plus writing for which at that point in time was still The Undefeated, all at the same time. And again, if I knew then what I know now, I would never do that again because it was so much. It was fulfilling in a sense because I saw all three projects coming to life at the same time while still writing for The Undefeated. But it was a lot of work. So when I work on this second book, I will definitely take time to focus on that and just that.
That was going to be one of my questions. I know you have a 2-book deal. I heard you on Books or Pop Culture yesterday.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned maybe wanting to be the Alex Haley to Allen Iverson's Malcolm X sort of story situation.
I would love that.
If it's not that, and I know you probably have ideas, so don't actually tell me, but like, is there another artist you would want to write about? I'm sure there's many.
Yeah.
Or you can also say you can't say anything if it's.
I can't say it right now, only because I'll tell you when we get off. But on the record,
yes, I love secrets.
Yeah, there's plenty of artists I would like to write on, but in particular, of course, I mean, a bio on Jay-Z's already been kind of written. Obviously, Decoded, which Jay-Z and Dream Hampton did, still one of my favorite books. But if Jay ever wanted to do something else in the written world, I would love to work on that with him. Yeah, there's so many. I mentioned Allen Iverson, who I consider an artist as well. But
sure.
I'm trying to think who else.
Does Tupac have a book?
So
not really.
Not really in the sense of a biography like how this one is.
Right.
But yeah, I
want him to have a book.
Yeah.
I love him. I have to say, like, he just was so compelling. Like, you made him so compelling in this book that I'm like, he needs a book. Justin needs to give Tupac a book.
Look, if I would love to write a Tupac book, and that might be like 600 pages because that dude lived. I mean, Biggie lived 6 lifetimes in one. So that means Tupac lived like at least 12 in one. Like he packed so much into 25 years that it's ridiculous.
It's incredible. Well, that's why every time I think about Tupac and then I like Wikipedia him and I'm like, right, he was only 25, that it's like so confusing to my brain because he was like such a force for such a short amount of time. It just feels like he should have been he couldn't have done it so quickly.
But he did.
I know, it makes me so sad. I can't even. Okay, how do you write? Where are you? How many hours a day? How often do you listen to music? If so, what are you listening to? Do you have snacks and beverages? That part's important. Candles, rituals. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it kind of shifts. I do. Obviously, I write often. I listen to music. Sometimes I listen to music that like get me in the mood to write, but I can't really listen to music while I write.
Okay.
Because it'll just distract me. Because next thing I know, I'm typing lyrics down like subconsciously. And like, wait a minute, what? Like that makes no sense. But there's like this lo-fi station on YouTube that just plays like these really chill beats that I love to write to. So snacks, I'm not really a big snacks person, to be honest with you. I'm not. Yeah, my wife says the same thing. Like she loves snacks, but I love it. Now don't get it twisted. I love to eat. You know what I mean? But I can't put like chicken wings or like, mac and cheese in front of me while I write because then.
Is that a snack? Is mac and cheese a snack?
No, that's what I
like
said.
A full
that's
part of a meal.
That's
so
what
you're
I
a meal
said.
person.
Yeah, I'm a meal person. Not really. I will eat snacks. I have nothing against them, but I don't actively go seek them out.
What about beverages?
I have some water by me, but I also have some adult beverages too. That'll help me get in the mood.
Loose.
Yeah, get loose because you need to be loose while you're writing. You can't be tense because then nothing will ever come out. So yeah, I'll have I have some water, but I also have, some Woodford around because I'm a big fan of old fashions.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. You and my
yeah,
husband should start a podcast about
yeah.
whiskey and rye and things.
Hey, look, I'm with it. I'm with it.
He's
Tell him
very into it.
I'm with it. Now the thing is, I can't have too many because
Well,
then,
obviously, you're working.
yeah, next thing you know, I'll fall asleep at the computer. But
Yeah.
uh,
You just turn in
which
a
has
draft
happened.
with just like you wrote other people's lyrics and that's it. You're like, oops, I
Yo,
don't know what happened.
there was one time I did that. I don't know whether whether I had too much to drink or whether I was just sleepy. Probably a combination of both. I'm typing and I guess I fell asleep for like 5 minutes. My hand was on like the letter M and I
It's
woke
just
up
like...
and it was just like M's for like 27 pages. I'm like, what the hell just happened here? I wish I
love
would have
this.
saved it. But
I
yeah.
wish you would have sent it in and been like,
Yeah.
here you go, Danielle Smith. I'm a serious reporter. Here you go.
She was like, why is this thing 37 pages? Like, oh, trust me. Get to page 7 and you'll understand.
It's real good. It is real good around there.
Mm-hmm.
What's a word you could never spell correctly on the first try?
Oh, environment.
Ooh.
Yeah. That word like gives me fits. Like even to this day, like I have like environment.
That's how I say it when I write it.
That environment kicks my ass every time.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. I think you're the first person to ever say that word on the show. So congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Oh, we didn't really talk about your podcast, King of Crenshaw, partially because I haven't listened to it. I just found out about it. Sorry. Blame your marketing team. But I am in LA and I have to listen to it. But again, I guess I'm just not that into hip hop is maybe what we're finding out. I didn't know very much about Nipsey Hussle.
Well, that's the
when
good
he was
thing.
Alive.
Yeah.
It's a good thing?
I mean, well, it's not a good thing, but in terms of the podcast, I guess it is because you're going in there green. Like everything that you're about to learn everything about him. And
I know.
Much like Biggie, like this dude's a lot more than just his music. And he touched a lot of people in a lot of real ways that, will be felt for a long, long time to come. And he is the same way Biggie is synonymous with Brooklyn. Nipsey will always be synonymous with South Central.
Well, it's just interesting, like living here and driving around and like seeing all the murals of him. Like obviously there's lots of Kobe murals, but there's lots of Nipsey murals, and Nipsey was not nearly as famous nationally as Kobe. So like to see how important he was to the community, it's like you can't deny it because he's everywhere. Like
he's everywhere. Yeah,
it's wild. So I'm excited to listen to that.
Yeah,
I'll obviously report back.
Please.
I will, of course. I'm not shy about that. I do want to know though, writing a book versus like creating the podcast. Did you have a preference? Was one more enjoyable, more fulfilling? Because I'm assuming the amount of research was maybe not exactly the same, but it was big projects.
No, there's definitely a lot of research that went into both. I say they were both equally fulfilling while being separate because I've always wanted to write a book, and I consider myself a professional writer at this point, but I had never written a book. So I knew that was going to take a different set of responsibilities and a different type of commitment. Although I know how to write. So it's basically like, all right, this has to be 100,000 words. All right. So I basically have to write 25,000 word pieces. That's how I broke it down. And I'm like, all right, so it's not that daunting when I look at it. Now, the podcast, it was crazy because on certain moments, I would be in book writing mode, and then I would have to switch to podcast mode, which means I got to go into script writing mode, which it wasn't easy to turn one off and turn the other on, and vice versa for me. So that was a learning curve for me. Script writing is totally different than book writing because in book writing, you got time to build a scene up. You got time to, talk about the contextual parts of society while talking about Biggie, whereas in script writing, like you got to get right to it right then while still managing to give context to a scene. And thankfully I had an incredible production team with me. And they really helped me out in terms of like, how the hell do I do this? Cause I know the idea is great, but I have no clue how to bring it together. And they helped me out quite literally every single step of the way. And I'm very pleased with how it came out. And I can't wait for you to listen.
I can't wait to listen. I'm going to cue it up ASAP-sually.
There we go.
I listened to some of your book on audio, and I really liked your narrator guy, but he said Jesus and Marrow wrong. And as a person who's had Jesus and Marrow on this very podcast, man. I was deeply offended. He called him DeZeus and Marrow.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oof, guy, Dion, you've got a great voice, but my guy, it's Jesus.
No, he's got a great voice, which is wild because we spoke a lot while he was recording that. And he would call and ask me how to say a lot of different things, but I don't think Jesus and Marrow was ever one of them. No.
Well, he went strong and wrong. And you know what, Dion? Never going to forgive you because I am very much a bodega girl.
There you go. Yeah, Dion's a great dude, but yeah, I understand.
He's got a great voice. Oh my God. He did such a good job. I mean, the audiobook is really fantastic for people who are curious if it's worthy. It is worthy. Okay. We have to wrap up, but I have just a few more quick questions. You have had this like whirlwind last few weeks promoting the book. The book's been out almost a month, not even a month yet as recording, but about a month as people are listening. Who's the coolest person who's expressed interest or talked to you about the book?
You mean outside of you?
Me? I'm not cool.
Yeah,
you did a thing. You had talked to a thing where Jay-Z came after you. So I feel like that's cooler. But thank you.
No, it was cool. Like Good Morning America was cool because that's when my mom and grandma really realized like, oh, wow, this is a thing. You know what I mean? Like that was a metric for them. Be like, I know Good Morning America. Obviously, they know who Biggie Smalls is as well. They're like, wow, this is cool. Going on Sway was definitely for a hip hop nerd like myself. That was lit. Like to be in there with Heather B was dope. And honestly, to be seated right beside CJ Wallace, Biggie and Faith's son, while talking about Biggie and telling stories about Biggie and having CJ be like, wow, I never knew that about my dad. Like that was powerful for me. So that was great. And yeah, the Twitter spaces, I still have to add open for Jay-Z in my LinkedIn bio. But, you know, to hear Jay-Z say like, nah, I'm going to read the book. Is he going to read the book? I don't know. But he said he would. And so I'm interested for that. And so, like you said, it's been a whirl. All of it still feels surreal. Still feels super surreal. So
cool. I have a theory. This is not really a question, and I know I'm going to go over, but we're just going to, it's fine. Do you have time to go over?
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay. As I ask you after we've already gone over. I have this theory that if Biggie and Tupac were still alive, that Jay-Z would not be married to Beyonce.
Do you think one of them would be married to Beyonce?
I like to think Tupac might have been. I don't know. Because when I think, okay, here's why I say this. No shots at Jay. Obviously, life turned out the way that life turned out. But like when they were rapping and being the huge celebrities that they were, Jay was like, he wasn't a thing. And so I just wonder if he would have been able to take up as much space if they were still around. So not that maybe she would be with that one of them, though I do think maybe Tupac, because it's sort of a fantasy of mine. But I just don't know. I just don't know. Do you think Jay would have become Jay if they were still around?
I think Jay was going to be a star. Granted, would he have been this big? Maybe, maybe not. I honestly have no clue. But I think Jay was going to be a star. Because if Biggie and Tupac never died, Jay and Biggie were going to come out, do that joint album. And if they were going to come out with a joint album, that was going to be like the biggest thing in rap at that point. Because now, by 1996, when Jay released his first album, like Tupac was already on death row. He was the biggest star in rap. Biggie was big. So he wasn't a superstar at the same time they were superstars.
Right.
But I do think he would have eventually become a superstar in his own regard. Would he have been, because now it feels like in terms of like the living goats in hip hop, like Jay-Z sits on a level all to himself.
Yes.
You know, in a sense. I do think if Biggie and Tupac had lived, that level of acclaim would have been more crowded than what it is right now. You know, like, but I also think like, had Pac lived, he would have gone more into acting. I think Pac would have been much more of a full-fledged actor. I don't know how much longer Tupac would have rapped. I think he would have still always been rapping, but in terms of just releasing music at the clip that he was doing in his life, I don't think that would have kept up, and nor should it have. He had
Right.
interests outside of music. It would have been great to see Tupac in, this whole era of like social justice and,
Hmm.
this hypersensitivity to, Black Lives Matter and police
Right.
reform and brutality in relations. Like, I
Tupac would not have a deal with the NFL. I'm just going to go ahead and say that,
nah.
Mr. Hova.
He might not have, but the
I don't know. Who knows? He probably would have become washed just like the rest of them. They're all 50-year-old men now. They're all washed.
Mhm.
It's great. They got to
Yeah.
grow old.
My only hope is that I don't think Tupac would have. I just wouldn't have want to see him as a like get off my lawn type rapper.
I know.
Like,
I know.
because Pac was wild. Now I do imagine Tupac with social media.
Oh my god!
Like, imagine
it would
Tupac
be like
with, like,
someone
Instagram.
take his phone. Yeah.
Yeah, like I do
Well,
hope he would.
Yeah.
I hope he wouldn't have been one of those artists that like flipped on us and yeah, I'm voting for Trump in 2020.
Yeah,
Like,
you hope he wouldn't have gone full Dave Chappelle.
yeah, like don't go full Kanye like how Kanye.
Yeah.
Went, but
Right.
but you just never know, man. We got older, they didn't.
Okay. Last two questions for real.
Mm-hmm.
For people who love this book, what are some other books that are in conversation with this book that you think they might like? Obviously, we talked about Danielle's book, but anything else?
Oh, go get Dan Charnas' Dilla Time. That's on the late great producer Jay Dilla. That is phenomenal.
I have it. It's really good.
Oh my God, that book.
I don't even know who
phenomenal.
Jay Dilla is.
See, that's why. Look, Jay Dilla is a hip hop legend. You should definitely. And so you're going into the book green, the same way with the Nipsey podcast. You're going
I'm going
green,
into everything green.
Yeah,
I thought I liked hip hop. Apparently, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I guess I don't. I don't know anything.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great like hip hop books to come out this year. And I'm not even just talking about what I hope my book is in that conversation.
It is,
but
it is.
Dan Charnas' Dilla Time on Jay Dilla. Paul Cancer wrote an amazing book on Mac Miller, which really puts Mac's life into like this really great perspective. This isn't hip hop, but Garrett Kennedy wrote an incredible book on
Whitney.
On Whitney. Didn't we almost have it all? There's a Lil' Kim biography coming out later this year, which is going to be phenomenal.
Who's writing it? Do you know?
Yeah, Kathy, and I think the word of her, but I mispronounce her last name all the time.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll just link to it in the show notes. We'll just put a link. I won't embarrass you.
Yeah, please.
Kathy, we're linking.
Yeah, but she's dope. But and she do you remember that Aaliyah book that came out recently?
Yes.
Did you hear? She wrote that book as well.
She wrote that one too. Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
Cool.
those are some other books that are definitely worth. Also, it's not music related, but my man David Dennis, The Movement Made Us, is a phenomenal book. Please get that.
So everybody who's listening to this right now, you will know that David was our guest the first week of June, and he'll be back next week as you're listening to this to discuss White Negroes by Lauren Michelle Jackson with me. So you'll all be very well versed in David and his stuff.
David's the man. He's one of my best friends.
I know. I love that your books come out on the same day. I love that you guys love each other and talk about it. It makes so sweet. But you two can't have a falling out, okay? Don't write who shot ya about David, okay? Like, I need you guys to stay together forever.
No, I won't do that. Now, me and David, we've been through too much to ever have a falling out now. So this is always going to have a happy ending.
Okay, good. All right, last question. Normally I ask people if you could have one person dead or alive read this book, who would you want it to be? But I'm going to sort of flip it on you and just ask you straight up, would you want Christopher Wallace to read this book?
Absolutely. I hope that, in some spiritual sense, heavenly sense, that like he has a copy up in heaven and he's reading this and he'd be like, you know what? This is accurate. Or this is something that I can be proud of that is written about me, and I had no control over what went in there, but I'm proud of this. So like, yeah, I would love for him to read it, and I hope, again, like I said, in that spiritual sense that he has, and I hope that he finds it as a fitting, dot in the universe that is his massive legacy.
I love that. All right, everybody. The book is called It Was All a Dream. I've been talking to the wonderful Justin Tinsley. You can get the book wherever you get your books. It's out in the world. I have to say, I'm just really excited that this book exists. I think you're a freaking incredible writer. And I can't wait to see whatever your next book is. I can't wait, you guys can find Justin's work on Anscape. It's like prolific. The podcast we're all going to group listen to together, the Nipsey podcast. So yeah, Justin, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a true privilege to come on this podcast and talk about this book and have your cosign, which is a big cosign in this world. So thank you very, very much.
I love that people think that. I've fooled everyone. Thank you, scammer.
You are not a scammer.
I am. It's true. I'm telling you now. You guys can put this in the documentary about how I'm a scammer. You can put this clip. All right, everybody else, we will see you in the stacks. Thank you all so much for listening, and thank you to Justin for being my guest. I'd also like to thank Gabby Fisher for helping to coordinate this interview. Quick reminder, the Stacks Book Club pick for June is White Negroes When Cornrows Were in Vogue and Other Thoughts on Cultural Appropriation by Lauren Michelle Jackson. We'll be discussing the book on Wednesday, June 29th with David Dennis Jr. If you love the show and want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks and join the Stacks Pack. Make sure you're subscribed to The Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, will you be sure to leave us a rating and a review? For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram and at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter. And check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Lauren Tyree. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tegirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.